a very good evening to all of you. It's good to have all of you here. And today we actually have a really important special person with us, Miss Joan Mary, and we are here with. She's actually a launch integration system engineer at Blue Origin, right? So
Yes.
I welcome you. It's good to have you both.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really cool to be here. So thank you for having me.
All right. So, like John, I've been reading about you like for the last 1 week, and so just I just want you to introduce yourself to the viewers and the listeners who are out there waiting for you.
Sure. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Joan Melendez Meisner, and I'm a launch integration engineer for Blue Origin. I got two bachelor's degrees, two dual degrees from the University of Maryland in chemical engineering and chemistry. And then I also have a master's degree from Naval Postgraduate School in systems engineering. I am a really big fan of space. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm excited to have you guys ask questions, ask anything that you want. Blue Origin has been in practice for a pretty long time. They've been, I think, a year older than SpaceX, and so we're now starting to get into the space race a little bit more, a little bit faster. So you're going to see a lot of more Blue Origin, and so I'm really excited to explain, anything that you want to know about Blue Origin, whether it's the application process, whether it's how to get a job, anything. Please ask. I'm here to answer all your questions.
All right. So, I was now interested to know about your passion for space, right? Because for me, like when I came in my second year of graduation, that's when I googled like the different disciplines of space that it offers, right? And then I came across this rocketry and whole big rocket stuff. That's when I realized that instead of going for astronomy and handling the hardcore mathematics over there, I should be doing this. Right? So that's where I got to know my passion. So I just wanted to know about your passion. Like, how did you find? When did you find it?
Yeah, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. So if you guys don't know where that is, it's where Disney and Universal and all the theme parks are. But we're about 30 minutes out from the Space Coast. So where the Apollo launched, where the shuttle launched, and now where Dragon is going to launch in 2 weeks. Living about 30 minutes from the Space Coast, I got to go to Kennedy Space Center as a kid, and we got to experience all of that. We did a lot of field trips. I would watch launches from my backyard. I remember when I first moved to Orlando, we moved into a house, excuse me, and then there was like a huge shake. The house shook when we first moved there, and I honestly thought it was an earthquake. I was like, I have no idea what this is, and what it was a sonic boom of a shuttle coming back. And so from then on, I was just like, you know what? I need to go to the Space Coast. I want to watch launches. And, growing up in Orlando, being so close, you're able to access all that stuff. You're able to tour a lot of the pads. You're able to, experience Space Coast first and hands-on. So that's how my passion for space started at a very young age. And so, I wanted to get into the STEM field so I can get myself competitive to eventually get a job in the Space Coast.
Okay, so like as you told us that you've basically had graduations in the field of chemistry, right? So actually, honestly, to be honest, really, I was really not that good at chemistry, right? The organic chemistry stuff, and then these things really don't get into my mind that easy.
Yeah.
However, I'm good at physical chemistry and inorganic chemistry,
Yeah.
right? So I just wanted to know, like having chosen the chemical background and then all the way to Blue Origin, how was the journey?
So I also was not very good in organic chemistry. I passed with a C, and C equals degree. So I'm just really excited that I just went past it. So not many people are very good at organic chemistry, so that's fine. So I started in chemistry because originally I wanted to work in the medical field. So maybe I could be a doctor in space. And I volunteered at a hospital and I saw blood and I almost passed out. So I said, I do not want to be a doctor anymore. And so I decided to go into the engineering field. And since I had a lot of the chemistry background, I was able to go and get a degree without being behind. And so from there, there's so many things that you could do. I was part of the Department of Defense Pathways program. And so the Pathways program is they paid for the last 2 years of your college, and you have a guaranteed job once you graduate in an agency, in a federal government agency. And so I was really lucky because my last year, when everyone's struggling to get an internship and resume getting ready, I didn't have to worry about that because I was already guaranteed a job. And so what that program allowed me to do is I got to intern in different agencies with the Department of Defense. The first one that I entered with, and I actually stayed, was Naval Air Systems Command, which was my very first job out of college. From there, I did a lot of biofuel research. So fuel that's made out of corn, fuel that's made out of something other than petroleum. We were the ones who qualified all of that fuel. And so that got me interested into, once I did the chemistry side, I wanted to move over to the aerospace mechanical side just because I wanted to get hands-on experience with the actual plane. I'm a huge aviation nerd. So I was able to move over and work on the F-18, which is the Navy's fighter jet. And the experience that I got from there, whether I was working on aerial refueling, whether I was working on fuel system, got me really excited on aviation and got me a lot of experience in flight test engineering. And so some of the astronauts, some of their background is actually flight test engineering. So I was able to work on the planes that the actual astronauts test and train on, which is the T-38. And so I was able to get a lot of that gain experience. So it wasn't until last year I went to a NASA social. And if nobody knows who that is or what that is, a NASA social is NASA's really good with outreach. And so what they do is every time that there's a launch, they come up with a social. So you apply and you get media credentials to come down, tour NASA, get really close to a launch, and get to experience the launch for hands-on, as well as you get to meet the NASA engineers, you get to meet SpaceX or meet ULA engineers, you get to network a lot with them. So it was this time last year around February when I watched the Demo 1 launch, which is the precursor to the one that's happening in 2 weeks. I haven't seen a launch in over a decade because, the shuttle program ended in the early 2010s. And so, watching a launch again in person changed everything. And I said, okay, I had enough of aviation. I now want to move to the space sector. So I decided right then and there that I would do everything I can possibly in my power to get a job at the Space Coast. And less than a year later, I got a job at Blue Origin, and the rest is history.
Wow, that was amazing. I mean, the moment when you said F-18s, I was like, okay, this is something really like it's going to be awesome. That was really
Yeah.
amazing. So, actually, talking about Blue Origins, I'll come to it later. But during the last one of the few last webinars, we had Annie Cohen from Firefly Aerospace, right? And so she was explaining us like how the culture and the atmosphere at Firefly Aerospace is, right? And a similar sort of culture is something that we observe at Star as well. So, I wanted to know about your experience with Blue Origin.
Yeah, sure. So, when I was trying to get to the space sector, I applied to a whole bunch of different jobs. I applied to ULA, I applied to Northrop, Lockheed, Blue Origin, which was at the time I kind of knew that it existed, but didn't really know the mission or didn't know what their passion was. Once I started researching their mission of, millions of people working and living in space, it got me really excited because I want space accessible to everybody. I want to go to space, whether with NASA or Blue Origin or anything like that. I want to go up there. And so it was really evident when I was going through the interview process, which, by the way, the interview process is insane. Once I was going through the interview process, I realized that once I went to the final interview, which is an in-person interview, and you get to meet the managers, you get to meet the people. As soon as I walked in, the atmosphere was just so friendly and super relaxed. Everyone was just, you can tell that everyone was there because they want to be there. It wasn't a job for them. It was more of, a passion project. And so, as soon as I walked in, from, the person at reception who was calming me down because I was extremely nervous for my interview, to the managers that I talked to, everyone was, just super relaxed, super chill. And when so kind of a little bit of the interview process, it's a 3-part interview. The first 2 are phone interviews. The last one is an in-person interview. And so your in-person interview, you have to put a presentation about yourself, and you have to talk about yourself for an hour in front of these people, in front of all these managers. And it depending on how many managers are in your interview, it depends on the next step is once you talk about yourself for an hour, you go into 30-minute one-on-one interviews with the managers. So in my interview, I had, I think, 7 managers. So I went into straight 30 one-on-one, 30-minute interviews one-on-one with each one of them. So it was a very long day. But just talking with them one-on-one, I didn't feel like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I was, welcomed with open arms. The culture there is just so great. I was able to ask the managers any question that I wanted, and I felt very comfortable. Even when they're asking me the technical questions, I was able to answer them, and I didn't feel like they were looking down on me. And that's what I love about the culture at Blue Origin is everybody is super friendly. Everybody wants to get to space. Everybody wants to build that architecture and that road to get everybody else to space as well. So, even when I started working there, if I don't understand a specific component, I can just go straight to the engineer that designed it. They go out of their way to stop what they're doing and actually explain what the component is because they want you to be knowledgeable. They want you to know about the rocket that you're currently working on or the component or the engine or anything like that. So to me, that's what sold me with Blue Origin. I felt more like a family member versus just a number or someone who just goes in to clock in. I felt like I was part of a big collective of just people who want to get to space. And I love the job that I have.
Cool. So, like that was like very much similar to Firefly Aerospace, right? Because the main thing is, with respect to all that thing that you told, like if you didn't understand a component, then you go to the engineer who designed it, so that and that's where it tells you about the working of these things. So, like personally, what I feel is learning is the process that should never be put a full stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it should be going on all the time. That's
Yep.
the best thing.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so talking about career, right? So, what all difficulties did you face when you were trying to shape up your career?
So the difficulties and the challenges that I endured was one of the major ones was rejection. So I applied to, when I first started applying to jobs down at the Space Coast, the only one that popped into my mind was NASA, just because NASA is just the place you want to work at if you want to work anything space. And I didn't really know too much on the private side. I was just wanting to stay in the government side. So I applied to, I want to say like 8 jobs at NASA, whether I was, whether I had the experience or not, I wanted to apply just thinking that maybe I can get an interview. I'm more impressive in person. So if you just give me the interview, I can probably get the job. But with NASA, it's extremely hard to kind of just walk in, waltz in and get a job. When I talked to several NASA engineers, they had a pathways internship that they used to do with NASA. So they gained the experience to get at NASA. Or if they worked in the space sector for a couple years before they moved over to the NASA side. So, one of the challenges that I faced was rejection because I never got the interview for those 8 positions or, 8 to 10 jobs that I applied for. I never really got the interview. I passed the, you're good enough to pass to go to the hiring manager, but once after that, you weren't good enough to get the interview. And so, it kind of, put me down a little bit when I was just applying to NASA. But then I quickly realized that once I started widening up my search and, applied to SpaceX, ULA, Blue Origin, Northrop, and Lockheed, I got job offers extremely quickly. So it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It just, I probably wasn't good for that job. I didn't have the experience that they were looking for. And so, at the end of the day, I'm just going to keep saying apply to everything. If NASA's where you want to end up, keep applying to NASA. I actually received a job offer from NASA when I applied the last time. And so it was really nice to kind of say, I finally got that job at NASA, but I decided to, stay at Blue Origin just because I love it so much. But at the same time, don't let rejection slow you down. Just learn from it. Most of the time you get to talk to the hiring manager, and you get to see what you can work on to get an actual interview. You can ask for that feedback. And so, don't let that stop you. Keep applying if that's where you want to go, if the space industry is where you want to go, and you keep getting rejection letters, just keep on applying because it'll eventually happen for you.
Yeah, exactly. So as Joan says, just keep applying. Just go for it, right? There should nothing be that's holding you back or just stopping you. So,
Mm-hmm.
Joan, I wanted to know, like, being a launch integration systems engineer, right? So, what
Mm-hmm.
all things do you do?
So I work on the requirements that we give to design engineers so they can design the rocket. So I currently work on the New Glenn rocket. So uh, Blue Origin has a suborbital, which is a New Shepard, and then the New Glenn, which is the orbital rocket that we're manufacturing in Florida, and we have the launch pad. We're building it up and everything. So as a systems engineer, you work with all aspects of specifically mission operations, which is what I work on. So from rolling the rocket from the integration facility to the launch pad, getting it upright, to launching it, and then the payload goes into space, and then recovering the booster on the drone ship. I work on all of that. So what I do is I give the requirements to the design engineers to say, okay, I want you to design this specific component or this launch pad system to this requirement. And so, I want to make sure that not only that they're designing to what we need, but also on the verification side, we want to make sure that once they design the component or once they design the system, we have to have some verification activities, some testing to make sure that their design is meeting the requirements. And at the same time, we also look at safety aspects. So we want to make sure that the component or the system is reliable, to make sure that, again, that it's going to do what it's intended to do. So that's what a systems integration engineer does, is we kind of see the whole picture. And so I'm lucky enough to be able to be kind of like on the top level. I don't know if I'd explain it, but some systems engineer have subsystems. So some work on the launch pad, some work on the payload. I got lucky enough and I get to touch everything. So I go from launch pad to the drone ship to the network that's going to communicate the drone ship to the launch pad to the space vehicle. All of that I get to touch. So I'm able to see a wide perspective of the whole big picture. And it's really cool and it's really neat. It's never boring.
All right. So there's a question forward by Mr. Sunny Kabrawala. He's asking, "Hey Joan, how can we get your coffee cup, like the Blue Origins one?"
um, yeah, so this one I actually just recently got. So the store, we used to not have an online store. And so I'd always walk around with Blue Origin stuff, and people would always ask me, when is Blue Origin going to have a store? I want the stuff. So a lot of the times when family and friends wanted Blue Origin stuff, I'd have to pay for it because they only had an employee store. On May 4th, on May the 4th be with you, on Star Wars Day, they decided to launch the Blue Origin store. So now you can get it online. And yeah, you can get this really cool coffee mug. There's a lot of other stuff that you can get, but you're going to be able to be one of the cool kids and have Blue Origin stuff as well. And you're able to walk around and make everybody else jealous.
All right. So I guess now, Mr. Sun, you know how to get the coffee cup, right? So, yeah, like I have also got to know that you are an astronaut candidate, right? So,
Yes.
how are you preparing for that?
Well, so I just applied this past round, and I think the applications ended in March. And so this is going to be my first time applying, and it was great. I don't, out of there's going to be 12,000 applicants that applied. So, I know my probabilities, and, as a science person, that, it's pretty low probability, but to get myself, comparable or to other people who want to be astronauts. I just finished ground school. And so I'm hoping to get my private pilot license by the end of the year. However, with the COVID stuff, I don't know how all that's going to work. I actually just got accepted to Project Possum's astronaut scientist candidate program. And so what that is, you're able to study suborbital flights and you're able to study the mesosphere. You're able to study a whole bunch of different things. I was supposed to start in April of this year, and that is when everything hit. So all of that is on hold right now. So I have not gone through that program yet, but I'm really excited about that. Other things that I'm doing is I'm learning Russian and using Duolingo right now, but I'm hoping to get a little bit better on my Russian just to get myself a good stepping stone above. So Blue Origin has 4 astronauts, former NASA astronauts that work for Blue Origin. One just retired, Ray J. Johnson. But the other thing that I did, and it's really unique about Blue Origin, it was really neat, is I talked to former astronaut Jeff Ashby and Mike Good. And I just emailed them out of the blue saying, hey, I'm, applying to be an astronaut. I would love to pick your brain. Jeff Ashby came to the Florida facility for some training, and he's like, yeah, just put an hour on my calendar and we'll talk. So, we decided to talk, and it was just really cool to have a former astronaut who used to do shuttle missions. Just, he'd let me go through what the astronaut process is like, how the selection process is like, because sometimes he's actually been on the selection board for a couple of the one. I think he was on the last one. He was on the last selection board. So he tells me what they really look for in resumes. They want to see a lot of experience, flight test experience. They want to get to know who you are outside of work as well. So, some people have done expeditions, up in the North Pole with penguins. Some people, there's other astronauts that just do so many different things. They want to see that unique factor in someone to make sure that, everyone can learn Russian, everyone can have a you can have a master's in engineering or in STEM, but they want to get that X factor out of you. So, he gave me some really good pointers. And then he also said that, if I don't get selected to be a NASA astronaut, there's going to be way more opportunities to become an astronaut with, Blue Origin's programs coming up, crew member 7. And right now we're working towards first human flight on New Shepard, which is our suborbital rocket that's going to allow anybody who wants to go on the rocket and can afford it will be able to go into space and experience weightlessness and experience that. So there's going to be opportunities for job openings for a crew member 7. That's what they call it. It's going to be like a blue astronaut. So you're going to be able to go inside the capsule with paying customers. So you'll be able to go to space several times. So there's going to be a lot of more opportunities with private industry. And if I don't get selected to be a NASA astronaut, I still hope I do. But if I don't, there's going to be other opportunities for that. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to, I just became a finalist for the NASA HERA program. So that's a human exploration research analog. And so what that is they take about 4 to 6 people to go on these 45-day missions, and it's a three-story habitat inside NASA Johnson in Houston, where the astronauts actually train. And so you're in there, you're working on isolation, you're working on different science experiments. So you're not just going to go in there to sleep, you're going to go in there to work, and it's a 45-day mission. So the next one I think is coming up in September, and I'm really hoping, I'm one of the finalists, so I'm really hoping that I get selected in that, and that'll help me, in the next round. If I don't get selected, I'll be able to talk about isolation. I'll be able to talk about, my experience with it, and so hopefully that'll get me a step up. If not this round, the next round.
Okay. So, there's this interesting question put forward by Mr. Sunny Cabrawala. He asks, did you ever get a chance to meet Mr. Jeff Bezos? How is his leadership and the way to manage stuff?
So no, I have not met Jeff Bezos, but I do know, so I've been to Seattle, so that's where our headquarters are at. And I hear that he goes into the office every Wednesday. And so what I hear from employees is if you see like bodyguards outside, but they're usually incognito, so you really have to look. That means Jeff Bezos is in the building. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to meet him when our New Glenn rocket launches, because he does so he went to the New Shepard when it launched. He's probably going to go to Texas when New Shepard launches first human flight. So once our New Glenn launches, he's probably going to come to our building, and hopefully we'll be able to meet him and take a picture. So right now he's the founder, and he still has, his hooks into the company. But right now the CEO is Bob Smith, and he is fantastic. One of the things that I like about Blue Origin, which I have not had in other companies, is the FaceTime that you have with leadership. they're constantly doing quarterly call-ins so you can ask questions. The CEO, Bob Smith, just came to our facility back in January. So you were able to meet him, you're able to talk to him, you're able to ask him questions, any questions that you want. And you can ask leadership questions, you can ask from leave to, hey, we need more snacks in the kitchen. Anything that you really want, you can ask him and they'll be able to answer. And the amount of FaceTime that we have with them is just, it's something that I have never seen before. So I'm really hoping that Jeff Bezos comes, and I'm pretty sure he will. So maybe I'll have a picture with him. But I would personally prefer, of course I wanted to meet Jeff Bezos, but I really want to meet the cast of The Expanse. I don't know if you watched that show on Amazon. It's a science space show, but they recently went up to the Seattle facility, and I was a little jealous because it's my favorite science show right now. So I'm hoping that they come down to Florida so they can watch the launch, and I'll be able to meet them as well. So crossing my fingers.
That's really amazing, because like even I do watch series, but I just watch Rick and Morty. Right? I
Oh
love
yeah,
watching Rick and Morty, honestly.
yeah. Rick and Morty is really good. I just saw that. They have a new show on Hulu called Solar Opposites, so watch that as well.
Absolutely, Roger that. Okay, so this there's this interesting question coming forward by Jack Amder. He asks, "What's the progress update on the development of New Glenn? Do we have any plausible demo launch date?"
So right now we don't have a date that we can tell the public right now. But if you see pictures, if you Google pictures of our launch pad, you'll be able to see the progress that we're making there. It's outstanding. I mean, before COVID, this is going to be my week 9 of working from home, so I haven't been out to the launch pad in a very long time. But just I'm able to see progress because they'll send us pictures, or if I Google pictures, you'll be able to see, oh, hey, the lightning towers came up. Oh, hey, the integration facility is almost completed, and that's where I'm going to be sitting at. I'm going to be sitting out in the launch pad working from there. The water tower is up, and I think it's the largest water tower in the world, which is a really weird thing to have, but I think it might go to Guinness World Records for that one. But right now we don't have a launch date for New Glenn, but I know that we're working really hard. Even through COVID, people are still at the manufacturing plant making a lot of the stuff that we need. The progress for New Glenn has not stopped because of COVID. It's just been changed whether we're working from home or we're not. So, the progress is still going, but unfortunately I can't tell you the launch date, but trust me, when I know and I'm able to tell you, I will let everybody know on my social media when the launch date is. I'll probably do a live stream as well, just so you guys can see it from anyone who's not near the launch pad. So it's just going to be so great because it's so massive. It's right below the Saturn V, and if you're a huge space nerd like me, the Saturn V is my favorite rocket. So this one is just shy of the Saturn V. So just the sheer size of it is just going to be outstanding.
I mean, Saturn V was actually a massive rocket, no doubt.
Yeah.
But like, it is also on my good books. But honestly, I just love the N1 rocket. I know it had many failures. It didn't had a
Yeah.
successful launch, but just for one reason, due to the static thrust vectoring, that's the only reason why I love that rocket. I mean, who could have come up with this
Yeah,
idea? Like,
that's a
you
good
have
one.
the engines all over the circumference. That was amazing.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this question is by Ishan Savaya. He asks, "What components do you work on at Blue Origin?
What what was the question? Sorry.
What components do you work on at Blue
Oh,
Origin?"
okay. So I don't work on a specific component. I work across several subsystems. So I work for the launch pad. I work for the integration facility. I work on the communication, so the network that's going to be talking to the space vehicle, to the mission control, to the ship, to tell the ship, or sorry, to tell the space vehicle where the ship is going to be, so it can land on the ship. Also, we have something called the transporter erector. So that's the the thing that the rocket's going to lay on once it's integrated, and it's going to go erect at the space pad or the launch pad. And then I also work on payload, so making sure that the payload, whether it's a space vehicle, whether it's satellites, whether it's the lunar lander in the future, all of that is, I touch every single aspect of it. So I don't have a specific component that I work on. I touch very many different things. Even something weird like the fluid systems for the propellants that are going to go in the launch pad that's going to go inside the space vehicle. I work on that too. So it's really neat because, I get to see everything. I get to, learn a little bit about everything, but it's also, it could be a little daunting at times because, when they look to you to be the expert of, 7 or 8 different subsystems, you need to make sure that you know your stuff. So you need to make sure that you talk to the design engineers and making sure that the system back and forth. So you're able to answer those questions. If, let's say, if one day Jeff Bezos goes to one of our meetings and he asks me specifically about the launch pad, then I'll know how to answer it. So, you need to know a lot about everything. So it's really neat.
All right, so I'm getting some information here, right? There are 3 minutes to go for the Atlas 5 launch, as you mentioned, right? So, just a small question before, are you gonna go out for the with your phone to show us the launch?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I can take you guys outside with me. You get to see what I see from my backyard. I'm about 20 minutes from the space pad, so you'll probably see like just a little light going up. So I can definitely go outside and show you guys that. So I'm hoping it goes off. So if we're 3 minutes out, I think it's probably best if I go outside, if that's okay with you.
All right, just a small question before you go out, right?
Yeah.
So, talking about the vehicle assembly building that you have at Blue Origin, is it a vertical one or a horizontal one?
Horizontal. Yeah.
Okay,
So it's
that's
yeah. So it's the integration facilities where we're going to integrate all the stages. It'll get onto the transporter erector. That's going to be the one that rolls out to the pad and then puts it vertical out on the pad.
all right. So, is it fine? Like, if you could answer a few more questions, or should we
Yeah.
go straight away for the? All right, cool.
Yeah. More questions.
All right. Okay, so I guess like people are really urgent to see the launch. They're actually paying me. I'm just go for the launch. Go for the launch first. Just few more questions, and then we'll be going for the launch. So yeah, I would actually like to know about your inspiration and why did you how this person inspires you and why you had this person as your inspiration.
So I have a lot of inspirations, but I'll talk one really quickly. I had a mentor when I worked at Naval Air Systems Command. She was a fighter pilot, and she was super nice. We got connected when we were volunteering for elementary school kids to do flight simulators, launch rockets, and everything. Turns out that after I left or she left. And we kind of stopped communicating, but I still got a lot of stuff from her with regards to career advice and stuff like that. The reason she left was because she was an astronaut. She got selected to be an astronaut. So Nicole Mann, if you guys know who that is, was my mentor, and so she is a huge inspiration to me because just a lot of the stuff that she went through to get to where she's at, and I eventually want to be her. So I'm really excited. She's one of the ones that are my mentors. But I can start going outside if that's what you guys want.
Absolutely. I guess, John, you need to just make a run quickly because
Okay.
it's about to go 3 minutes. You have to watch the launch as soon as possible.
All right.
That's
Hopefully,
really interesting. Like for the first time, like it's a webinar with a launch.
all right. Let's see. All right.
All right.
So I'm outside. We can still talk if you guys want, and then when it launches, I'll bush it that way. The clouds are there's a lot of clouds out here, so it may be difficult to see, but we'll see. We'll definitely turn the camera, and if you guys want to watch that, more than happy to. But I can answer questions while I watch as well.
That's perfectly amazing. All right. So, what systems do you find the most challenging to work on? This question was by Ishant Savaya.
That's a really good question. I think the most challenging communication sides, working engineering, electrical engineering, to get all of those networks to communicate to each other. Since I don't have that background, I mainly have, I have a degree in chemical, and then I worked a lot of aeromechanical side of things. Working the electrical side is a little bit challenging just because I need to get myself up to speed on how that works. But again, I talk to the network or the software engineer or the electrical engineer, and they're always happy to tell me and show me how that works. So I'm starting to learn a little bit better, but that's probably the most challenging subsystem that I work on.
Okay,
Sorry, this
and
is a little moving.
it's fine. So, like this, next question is again by Ishant Sabaya. He asks, does NASA have any plans with Blue Origin?
So yeah, we just recently got selected by NASA for the Blue Moon or the lunar lander. Blue Origin is partnered with 3 other aerospace companies, so Northrop, Lockheed, and then Draper Technologies. So each one of us is going to have a different aspect of the lunar lander. So we just got a huge contract, I think about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, we definitely are going to be working with NASA, whether it's the Blue Moon or in the future, because we want to make sure that, we want to be in partnership with them when they send the first man and woman back to the moon. We also want to work with them with Gateway. So we want to build that infrastructure with NASA. So we'll definitely be working with NASA in the future, but that was a big contract that we just won as well.
Okay, it's fine. All right, yeah. So this another question that is put forward in the in the live chat by where's this question? Yeah, by Divya Rajgopal. She asks, "Hi, Joan. What is the scope for communication engineers at Blue Origins?"
What is the scope for what? I'm sorry.
Communication engineer.
Oh, yeah. So a communication engineer, you could work on the network side. If I'm getting this correctly, those are the ones that work with networks, or is it? So I'm not really sure. A communication engineer. I'm assuming it's the network.
Yeah, and actually, he's asking about the
Yeah.
this communication engineer.
Yeah. So you can work on the network systems. So the mission control. We just pulled up the mission control. It's just 100% done. So the mission control, you'll be working a lot on that. The interface between mission control and the space vehicle, you'd also be working on that as well. Making sure that the data that we get from the space vehicle, the uplink and the downlink from the actual space vehicle, we're able to get that data. So that is very important as a communication or network engineers to make sure that that link is not corrupted.
Hmm.
We get the data because that's how we learn for the next round. For every launch that we do, we always want to look at the data to make sure that it's going or it's launching and it's doing everything that it's intended to do. So that data is extremely important. So communication engineer would definitely be involved with that, the communication between the space vehicle and mission control, as well as the drone ship as well. You want to make sure that once the booster comes back, that it lands specifically on the ship, because the ship is not going to be static. It's going to go, I want to say, like between 5 and 10 nautical miles. Because if you've ever been on a boat on the ocean, if it's still, there's going to be a lot of waves, so it goes up and down. So you want to make sure that it's pushing through those waves. So when it lands safely and it doesn't land on a ship that's going up and down. So yeah, there's the communication network engineer is extremely important at Blue Origin.
Okay, I hope your question was completely answered. And yeah, just a small update I wanted from you, Joan. Is the rocket still there or is it gone?
I did it launch because I did not see it.
Okay, fine. So I guess Mr. Sunny, I guess the rocket is still there on the launch pad. We'll be able to see it, or probably we'll hear it, right? The sound.
Oh yeah, well you'll definitely hear it. But they
Yeah.
had a 2-hour window, so it was supposed to be from 9:14, I think, till
Okay.
11:14. So you have that,
Hmm.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So, talking about the opportunities in space sector, like what else opportunities can be availed by the space pioneers and the aspirants in this sector?
So there's a lot of opportunities in the space sector right now, for anybody who wants to go into the space industry. You don't necessarily have to have a STEM degree. There's people who are welders, who are machinists, who actually machine the components, who machine the launch vehicle itself. So you don't necessarily have to be a STEM degree if you don't want to have a STEM degree. However, if you want to be in the design portion of things, or if you want to, get the requirements for those design, it's engineers are usually the ones who get that, or even physicists. You don't necessarily have to have an engineer, but just a STEM degree. And so, right now with NASA being fully funded and getting more money for the government, it's going to give us more opportunity to work with the private industry that's ramping up super quickly. ULA, SpaceX, Boeing is doing the Orion capsule, Virgin Galactic as well, and as Blue Origin. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to go into the space industry. And right now we're just kind of like in the beginning stages. We're building the infrastructure. So if we continue, it's going to take lots of generations to continue to help us get to space, to help build that road to space. So right now, if my grandchildren wanted to go into the space industry, I'm pretty sure they're able to. And so, there's just so many great opportunities out there for everybody who wants to go into the space industry.
Okay, Joan, that was really nice to get to know. Actually, I'm just getting some information here on WhatsApp. I guess the rocket has left the launch pad. Right?
What?
I don't-
I did not see it. I promise I've been looking at it the whole time.
It's absolutely fine. I guess now you should go back to your room and just like you might be tired now
Yeah,
standing for so long.
it was probably the clouds that I couldn't see, but
Yeah, absolutely. That could
normally
have
you
been
can
the
hear it
reason.
too. So I'm sorry,
Hmm.
guys.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Just gonna come back in real quick.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so this question is my favorite. Since Mr. Sean Moss has been on the show, I've been asking to this question to almost all the panelists, right? So, what would you prefer, a safe journey, up and down safe journey to ISS, or a one-way ticket to Mars?
Okay, so that's a really hard question. I would probably do this.
I'm able to come back and, do more interviews and, talk about my experience within the ISS itself. But, the one-way trip to Mars is really, really tempting. If they ask me to do it, I'm 100% there. I would definitely do it. I would never say no to that. But, if I had to choose, it would be that one-way trip to ISS.
All right, because honestly, like every time someone asks me this question, I always say it's Mars because it's now or never. It's just that I just want to go back, go to Mars, just with one-way ticket and maybe never return back, right? Because then I get to die as a hero. That's exactly what I told even Bailey Burns, right? It's like for some reason it's just amazing to die there on Mars. If unluckily if I die.
That would be cool to be remembered in history for the either the first person or someone to go to Mars. You'll be in the history books, so that'd be kind of neat.
Exactly, the graves on the yard on the Mars. So
Yep.
all right. Yeah, so this question, okay, before that, I guess ULA just pranked us. Fine. Because we were expecting a launch and it just happened behind the clouds. So this
Oh,
question
I
is by
know. So
Rudra
there,
Ranveer. Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was gonna say there. This morning when I checked, there were like 80% go. For weather, they had a lot of clouds, and then they also had upper winds. So, they're if you don't follow the CEO of ULA on Twitter, his name is Tory Bruno. Please do so. He is fantastic, and he will answer all of your questions. Like he is extremely. He's an engineer that is now a CEO, so he knows the ins and outs of spacecraft and everything. So please follow him. He's fantastic.
Okay, so this question is here put forward by Rudra Ranveer. He asks, astronauts have to face a lot of G-force during the launch. Isn't it possible to design a rocket which accelerates slowly instead of a sudden increase in speed?
Um, so that would be difficult to do, but not impossible. So that's the beauty of space, is, if you can dream it, then you can try and design it. There's no one stopping you. So I would think that would be great because I experienced G-force on the fighter jet, and it's horrible. Uh, they almost want they I you know they want to make you throw up, and it almost happened. So if someone could design a rocket that you didn't have to experience that much G-force, I am all for it. Again, that's what the beauty of having people who are interested in space, the next generation. That's something that they could think about designing. That would be fantastic, and that's again, the your whole concept of space for everyone. That's exactly what that is, right? So if somebody in India and somebody in Canada and someone in Japan wants to design that, I'm pretty sure NASA would be all for it.
All right, John, I'm just interested to know like what all fighter jets have you been in? Because I'm a diehard fan of fighter aircrafts, right? I just love them. So just wanted to
Um,
know.
yeah, so F-18, which is my all-time favorite jet. The F-14 is my favorite, which is the Top Gun jet. But I mean, this is the same variant of the F-18, right? I got to be really close to the F-22 and then the JSF, which is the new Joint Strike Fighter that Lockheed's doing for the Navy. Working for the Navy and that being my first job right out of college, it was just so eye-opening. I got to do so many cool things that I would not have been able to do unless I was in the military. I was on a carrier airplane, and I was on a carrier, so a Navy carrier, so the one that goes out to sea, and it's a huge ship. I was able to walk on that, go on there for about 6 to 7 days, and then I was able to be catapulted off. So on a plane. So there's just a lot of cool things that I'm able to experience. I got to see so many different planes, the B-22, the trainer planes that the astronauts use to train and pilot as well. So pretty much any plane that you can think of, I've seen. Even the drone ships, I've seen those up and close and personal as well. And so there's just a whole bunch of really neat things that I'm able to see. But again, the F-18 is my absolute favorite.
Dude, yeah. Honestly, John, you're really making me a lot jealous here because F-14, then F-18, and then F-22. That's really
Yeah.
amazing because honestly, like you know what, like F-16s, those are the single engine aircrafts, right? But for some reason, like the dual engine aircrafts, like they are really beautiful. I just love
Yeah,
those.
they are.
Okay,
The single engine one is really loud. So
okay. So, yeah. So this question is again by yeah, Ishant Savaya. He asks, what aspect for the lunar lander are you going to work on?
So we are working, I believe, on the descent phase. So it's called the Blue Moon, and there's going to be rovers attached to those. It could also be a capsule. So like I said, the national team consists of Northrop, Lockheed, Draper, and ourselves. We're kind of the leader of the team. I think Lockheed has the ascent. We have the descent. Draper, I believe, has kind of like the avionics, the GPS portion of things. And so, we already have that Blue Moon concept already out there. I know if you've seen Jeff Bezos talk, or if you've seen, my social media, you're able to see what the Blue Moon looks like. And so, we're designing that portion, but we're also designing the engine. So the BE7 is a variant of the BE4 that's going to be going on the New Glenn. And so the BE7 is going to be going on the Blue Moon. So not only are we doing the Blue Moon lander, we're also working on the engine, and we're qualifying the engine. We're designing the engine here in the United States. So it's really interesting work going forward.
Happen. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. So there's this next question, which is about the space education, because honestly, here in India, we actually don't have any syllabus or the textbooks regarding this the space, right, which teaches us space. So like I guess this is a major drawback that I see in our system, education system. So how do you feel that the space education is going to help in building the space ecosystem in the country?
Space education is extremely important. I think that, I'm a NASA Solar System Ambassador, and so what that is it's a group of hundreds of volunteers across the United States that work in the community and talk about science, talk about NASA's upcoming missions, talks about the science behind a lot of the NASA missions. So, I go to elementary schools, I go to middle schools, I go to high schools. I'll go to astronomy clubs in Central Florida and talk about it because it's extremely important to keep everybody engaged. One of the aspects, one of the reason NASA has so much funding is because of the public support. People are now really excited about space exploration again, with SpaceX, Blue Origin, all these companies getting built up. Getting to space is becoming more of a reality, and so we want to continue that trend going, and public support is a huge factor because I know that when I retire, I want to make sure that space is still in a talking point, and that we're still building to something higher than I can never see. I want to make sure that the generations behind me, keep building on the designs that we couldn't design, something that they can design a little bit better, or design something brand new. And in order to do that, we have to, volunteer time, do webinars, talk about space. As a solar system ambassador, I have a whole bunch of material. So if you really want it, I can send you links to that material as well. I can post it on my social media. You guys, it's a whole bunch of information that NASA's doing, and I think it's fantastic. And that's this information that we use when we do a lot of these webinars, or if we go to schools and stuff like that. We use a lot of that material that's taken from NASA itself. And so the other thing is Blue Origin. We funded Jeff Bezos's vision for millions of people living and working in space. Again, that is only a vision if we continue it past, when he leaves, when I leave, and all that stuff. So he funded Club for the Future. So if you go online and you Google Club for the Future Blue Origin, you're able to see, so what it is, it's a postcard that you can print out. You can write your vision of space, or you can draw your vision of space, send it to, I think the link is on Google, on the website. And right now, our New Shepard, the suborbital rocket, we're working towards first human flight, but right now, whenever we do launches, our payload is those postcards. So, whenever you have your vision, you write it down, or you draw it if you're really good at drawing. I suck at drawing, so I'd have to just write something. All of that goes into our capsule, it goes into space, and it comes back, and it's returned with a flown in space stamp. And so that all of that is being sent back to everybody who put their vision on the postcard. And I think it's really cool, and it's really neat because it's bringing everybody together. It's not just the United States, it's not just our country. Anyone in the world can do it. And if you have a constant reminder, and if you're really into space, if you have a constant reminder that you have a postcard that actually flew in space, and that can give you inspiration to get into space education, or even get into a career in space. So if you want, check that out. I'll post it on my social media. It's fantastic. I've already sent something up, so hopefully I'll get that postcard back with the flown in space.
Yeah, so I was saying that regarding that solar system material, I would definitely like to have it because recently in my class test on space physics, I got 16 out of 30, and that was not actually good. So I really need something interesting to read on it, right?
Right.
Okay, so space is making space for everyone. Like Star believes in space. Star believes that space is for everyone. So what's your take on that?
100% agree. Space is for everyone. Space is the good thing about the space industry is we work so closely with other space industries from other countries. And so, our astronauts used to go to Russia because our space shuttle program shut down. So we worked with the Russians to send our astronauts to space. And so, with all of the companies coming together, space is kind of like a common denominator. They always want to make sure that, all of the countries are involved because they want to make sure that space is for everyone. And going back to our vision for Blue Origin specifically, our vision of, again, millions of people working and living in space. In order to do that, we want to make sure that space is for everyone. So for the for the New Shepard that we're going to be opening, there's going to be a whole bunch of blue astronauts. There's going to be people that don't have to necessarily apply like the rigorous application process to be a NASA astronaut. I think the only thing you'll need is kind of like a physical and, a waiver that you're going to be okay going into space. And so, if you're chosen and you're good to go, then, it doesn't matter if you're from the United States or India or Canada or Japan. You can go to space, and that's what we want. And so I 100% believe that space is for everyone, and space should be for everyone.